Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Prophecy Update. As always, it's our desire to bring the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. So thanks for joining us this week. What we want to talk about this week is what's currently going on with the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. And I want to talk about the instrument that is being used by God, actually, that He is allowing something to happen to cause the regathering of the Diaspora. And by what I mean by Diaspora is the Diaspora Jews, those who have been dispersed among the nations that are not back into the land of Israel. And what instrument He is using to regather that Diaspora back to the land of Israel. Because as we as prophecy students have studied, we know that God is going to regather the nation of Israel from the nations, and He's going to do this twice. There are two regatherings, worldwide regatherings of the nation of Israel. We are right now living in the time of the first regathering of the nation of Israel. We have been watching this regathering of Israel in unbelief since the late 1800s when the Zionist movement started. And it's carried on obviously through the Balfour Declaration up into 1948 when Israel becomes a nation. And Israel continuing to get stronger and stronger, and by stages fulfilling Ezekiel's dry bones vision, which indicates that Israel will be reconstituted in stages and finally come to faith in the Messiah later on during the tribulation period. But we are watching this first regathering. And let me note this, that this first regathering is all the Jews going back into the land. And a significant portion of Israel is in the land now. But the other significant portion of Israel mainly is in America and among the Western societies. And so, for God to regather all of Israel back into the land, something significant needs to happen that would cause the Jews that are still living in the diaspora, in America primarily, and most of Europe and around the world, what would cause them to want to come back into the land? Well, there's a common denominator, and we're going to talk about that today. The second worldwide gathering will happen to Israel as they are in belief, and that will happen at the second coming. Okay, so those are the two worldwide regatherings of Israel that Scripture notes. So we're going to focus then on the first regathering that's currently going on right in front of our very eyes. And we want to note what is the instrument that God is using to draw Israel back into the land. So let's take a look at, historically, what God has been using to cause this first worldwide gathering of Israel back into the land. And it started in the late 1800s, about 1894, at the time of Theodore Herzl. And obviously you guys know Theodore Herzl. He was the founder, really, of the Zionist movement. And what had happened is Theodore Herzl had witnessed the Dreyfus Affair. If you're not familiar with the Dreyfus Affair, this was a situation where Colonel Alfred Dreyfus, he was a French staff officer and a Jew who in the fall of 1894 was accused of treason on behalf of the German government. And it was a very sensational trial which brought out tremendous anti-Semitic reaction in France. The French government was convinced of his guilt and succeeded in arousing the French popular opinion, basically propaganda really, that not only was Dreyfus guilty, even though he was innocent, but it went against the Jews in Europe in general. And Theodore Herzl saw this, and he saw that here's an innocent Jewish man being opposed by the French government, who were determined to prove him guilty against, all evidence. And that was a wake-up call to Herzl. And this Dreyfus affair really became to him and the Jews living in Europe at that time a symbol of the entire thought pattern of the Europeans towards the Jewish people. And they realized they were surrounded by hatred and anti-Semitism. And so this caused Herzl and some others to start contemplating a solution that would protect the Jews. And they realized they weren't safe in Europe. You had the Russian pogroms and other things that were happening. And so they concluded that it is best that a Jewish state in the homeland of Israel be established for their protection. And so that started the Zionist movement, obviously, and they, Herzl had went to England and Britain to talk about certain things about possibly that happening. And then Uganda was offered to them, but they said no. We're not going to go to Uganda. We want to go back to our homeland. And then through World War, One, Britain obviously getting control of the area was able to do the Balfour Declaration and establish, a real push towards Zionism of them going back into their ancient homeland. So out of this desire to have this homeland, Israel eventually reaches statehood in 1948, as you know. And there's been a lot of Jewish people returning back to the homeland of Israel, their ancient homeland that God gave them. And so again, but what was the issue? What was the issue? The issue was anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism was the main motivator of them establishing their homeland. So does God use sometimes negative things in our lives to motivate us? Yes, he does. In fact, he motivated the early church in the book of Acts when they were all clumped up in Jerusalem with the apostles and they wouldn't spread out. So what does he do? God sends them persecution and they disperse. And they do their job, obviously, of spreading the gospel, but he had to send them something negative to get them to disperse. Well, now what we see now with Israel is a negative that's happening, anti-Semitism, that is driving the motivation for them to go back into their land. Yes, there's other factors. There's no doubt there's religious factors, there's cultural factors, and stuff like that that's involved. No doubt about that. But what is the main factor? Why are they leaving the diaspora? Because it's not safe to be in the diaspora. That's why. And because of anti-Semitism. And now today, we're seeing worldwide anti-Semitism after the October 7th attack by Hamas. And it's everywhere. In the colleges, it's in politics, it's in all different Western parts of society. We definitely know it's in the Islamic parts of the world. There's no doubt about that. But we have the colleges, universities, there's public schools. All that is happening worldwide. And it's happening in the West. And that is the main issue that's going to drive Israel back to the land. So God's not done with his first regathering. Don't think that 1948 and Israel becoming a nation was the end of that first regathering. He is still regathering his people back into the land. Why? For Jacob's trouble. That's why. And so he's got many of the Jews to leave Europe, obviously. But then how is he going to get them to leave places like the United States and other parts of Western society? Well, I can probably guess, and you can probably guess, it's going to be anti-Semitism. What would make an American Jewish person want to leave America? Because they have it, we have it in America very good. It's a very good place to live. There's no doubt about that. Why would someone earning a living here, making a good life and whatnot, want to leave America to go live in Israel, which is surrounded by enemies? Well, I can tell you this, because the protection of living in Israel by the Israeli government and the IDF will be more secure than living in countries like America and Western Western countries like Australia, Canada, and Europe that won't protect them. And that's what we're starting to see. And so unfortunately, this is the way the West goes. The West becomes anti-Semitic, which is going to cause the rest of the Jews to go back into the land of Israel as God has predicted, right? And God has said. He just didn't tell us what the main motivator would be. But now you and I living on the ground, we see it. And a lot of this obviously is coming from the left that's anti-Semitic, no doubt about that. There's parts of the right that are anti-Semitic, like neo-Nazis and whatnot. But a lot of this is coming from immigration, okay? Whether it's legal or illegal immigration of Muslims into the West. And that's where a lot of this comes from. And so what we have to understand is that there's a red-green alliance. The red representing the communism, Marxism, socialism, and the green representing Islam. And what has happened is for Marxism, communism, socialism to take over the West, which is a free market enterprise, it has to use a hammer like Islam to destroy the West, to get rid of free market capitalism, to get rid of Judeo-Christian ethics and values and morals in order for communism to take over, or really beyond that, globalism, right? That's what it's about. And so there's this red-green alliance to destroy the West. And they're going to use Islamic immigration into the West to do this. And obviously there are serious consequences of allowing Muslim mass migration into Western society, because most of Western society has been sympathetic to Israel's plight and protective of Jewish people. But when you move masses of Muslim into Europe or into other parts of Western society, it puts Israel at risk. It puts the Jewish people at risk. And has changed the mindset of a lot of Western, cultures and Western states, especially in Europe. And really, Europe has been the real hotbed of this. It's been the real testing grounds. And of course, you have the globalists and the communists or whatever, and the socialists above everybody running the thing, and then you have the useful idiots below that. And the useful idiots, have bought into the woke narrative of we need to be a welcoming culture that is radically diverse, and, we want inclusion, the whole woke nonsense, right? And so the communists and the globalists are just laughing at the useful idiots. And so these useful idiots are saying, come on in, you can come in and we'll all get along. And you don't have to assimilate. You can keep your Sharia law or whatever, and you don't have to accept our values. You don't have to accept our way of life. You don't have to accept our tradition. In fact, you can even hate our way of life. You can hate our tradition. You can hate our country, and you can hate our people, and we'll let you come into our country. And that's what Europe has effectively done. And this is what the West has effectively done. And again, it's destroyed Western culture. And it is destroying Western culture. Look at this cover of National Geographic. This is 2016, called The New Europeans. Is that shocking to you? But this is what Europe has allowed. This is what the West has allowed. And again, this is what's causing a lot of the anti-Semitism. And again, America is following right behind Europe in this. So now let's turn our attention to some real data. According to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, Gallup has a lot of data suggesting that the millions of these Muslim people coming into Europe or Western society fundamentally and violently oppose Israel. As you know, in Islam, hating Jews is endemic to the religion. And now they're wanting to migrate into Western society, which typically provided support to the Jewish state, right? And so at the end of the day, and on a global scale, there are about now 166 million people willing to immigrate to the United States, 46 million people to the United Kingdom, and 39 million people to France that are Islamic. And obviously, this poses a major problem. It causes a lot of anti-Semitism. In another article of the Jerusalem Post called The Radical Islamic Immigration Strategy, it reported that the Muslim Brotherhood's 1991 general strategic goal for the Brotherhood in North America was purposeful Muslim immigration. And this is what they call stage one of radical Islam's battle against the West and the Western values. And so the article goes on to say is that in 1987, the Muslim Brotherhood Project presented Islam as a civilization alternative, supporting a global Islamic state through jihad. And, quote, to eliminate and to destroy Western civilization from within, it said, and to sabotage its miserable house so it is eliminated, so that Islam is victorious over all other religions, end of quote. Okay? That's what it said. Islam is on a global caliphate mission. You must understand that. With a country-by-country political strategy of subjugation in 4 stages beginning with immigration, according to this article, and it's true. So the first part is settlement, and then population expansion through this settlement, and that's what they have done effectively in the West. The second stage is consolidation of power, and this is through the demands of deferential treatment, religious accommodations, judicial, cultural, and educational non-integration, right? They won't assimilate, and covert efforts to destroy the host society from within. And this is achieved by undermining the power base of non-Muslims and their religions, especially Jews and Christians, and that's what they're attempting to do to the West. According to the article, the third stage is open war, okay? Just what it is, jihad. Just like you saw with Hamas with Israel, right? And the fourth stage is transformation of the host state to an Islamic theocracy under Sharia law, which denies and destroys non-Muslim rights, freedoms, religions, culture, worship, and populations. That's what the goal is, right? And so most global jihadist organizations embrace this theology, according to the article, and it's true, including Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinians, who threaten Israel all the time and committed the atrocities back on October 7th, right? That's what they do. And so any of us understanding this shouldn't be shocked because this is what this religion teaches. And as Earl Cox notes in the article in the Jerusalem Post, he goes, in Western society, immigrants are free to live and worship as they choose. We call that freedom of religion. But not to come to Western society and unravel the fabric of that society, unravel the culture in the country that has welcomed them. But see, that's what they're trying to do. Democracy's melting pot doesn't mix with radical Islam because Islam and freedom cannot coexist. It doesn't allow for that. And that's what the mistake that the European countries are making with Islam. And this is the problem in America as well. So what's happening is the Islamization of the West through Muslim migration is becoming a Trojan horse for the West. And the West then basically has imported anti-Semitism. So that goes in line with what we're talking about. What's the main motivator of why Israel's returning back into their land? Anti-Semitism. So you can see all of it adds up. And let me give you an example of the mindset of Muslims in Western society. This is in a story on Front Page Mag by Stephen Kirby entitled, Over 1 Million Muslim Americans Favor Global Terrorists. So in the article, it talks about a polling company by the name of Signal. And it released a report on Americans' views about the early October Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. The report was titled Survey of General Population, Israel-Hamas Awareness and Attitudes. So this survey presented the same questions to 6 different groups: Jewish Americans, Muslim Americans, evangelicals, Republicans, independents, and Democrats, with the results being shown for each. The survey indicates that around 1.3 million Muslim Americans have a favorable impression of Ismail Haniyeh, who is the senior leader of Hamas, who back in January 2018, the U.S. State Department designated him as a global terrorist. Yeah. Plus, on October 8th of 1997, the United States designated Hamas as a foreign terrorist organization. Yeah, right? So this favorable impression of this Hamas leader, again, and Hamas itself, was not due to a lack of information among Muslim Americans. No. The survey showed that when asked how closely they followed the events in Israel since the attack of Hamas on October 7th, 30.9 Muslim Americans responded somewhat closely, and 44.9 responded very closely. When asked about being informed with regard to Fatah, Hamas, and Palestinian politics, 65.4% Muslim Americans considered themselves informed, and 7.3% considered themselves experts. So the survey showed that Muslim Americans were also aware of the following events regarding October 7th attack by Hamas. They were fully aware that 1,200 people were killed in Israel, including women and infants and elderly and Holocaust survivors. They were fully aware that over 250 people were attending an all-night musical festival were killed in Israel. They were fully aware that 100% people, including women and young children, were abducted from Israel and being held hostage in Gaza. And they were aware that Hamas militants decapitated young children during their attack. And so, despite the extent of the knowledge among Muslim Americans about the above incidents that I just mentioned, around 1.3 million Muslim Americans still had a favorable impression of Hamas's leader and Hamas. That's pretty bad. And the writer of this article, Kirby, pointed out that the core tenets of Islamic doctrine are in direct and irreconcilable conflict with the United States Constitution. The attitudes and beliefs of around 1 million or more Muslim Americans regarding terrorists and the support of terrorists shown in this survey raise serious questions about the security of the United States and, I would say, Western society. But let's get back to Israel then. The implications for Israel and the implications for Jewish Americans or Jews living in any part of Western society is pretty scary. That's not good, that we have people in Western society that back Hamas, that back terrorist activities against Israel, and don't care what Hamas or Hezbollah or any of them do. If this is going to be allowed to continue, and our academia and our media and our politics won't address the issue of anti-Semitism coming from Islam, coming from the left, coming from the media, coming from the, wherever, then a Jewish person in America or in the West is not going to feel safe. And therefore, their mind will be made up saying, well, the only safe place to be is in my homeland with the IDF and the Israeli government that I at least know that will try to do their best to protect me. And hence, they will have a desire to go back, and many will go back, unfortunately. And it's a sad state of affairs to even have to say this. But how is God going to get the rest of the diaspora back into Israel? America is going to become so anti-Semitic that no Jew will feel safe living in America. That's where this is going. And so, this is a sad fact, but the genie's out of the bottle. It's out. We see the anti-Semitism everywhere in Western society. And for too long and too many decades, this has been allowed to be brewed over and over again in academia, the media, Islamic immigration. Look, we didn't learn anything from 9/11. We didn't learn anything. We don't learn anything from terrorist attacks in the West. We don't learn anything because, number one, the media won't report on it, and the academia just kind of excuses it. So we're destined to commit suicide as a culture. And so, this is how the globalists take over the West, but this is how Israel goes back into the land. So let's go back to Israel. Isaiah 11 through 12 talks about two regatherings. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros to Cush, from Elam to Shinar, from Hamath, and the islands of the sea. He will set up a banner for the nations that will assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So as you can see in Isaiah chapter 11, Isaiah notes two worldwide regatherings. This one that he refers to in the rest of the passage refers to the second regathering in belief that will happen after the second coming. And the dispersion of them will happen because of the hands of the Antichrist, right? He disperses them. So we have two. So this first one, both of them, I should say, are coming from four corners of the earth. But this first one is return to the land in unbelief, okay? It's coming out of judgment for judgment. And the judgment we're referring to is the tribulation judgment, Jacob's trouble. Ezekiel 20, 33 through 38 mentions this. Let's read that. As I live, says the Lord God, surely with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with fury poured out, I will rule over you. Therein lies what God is wanting to do. I'm going to rule over you. It's referring to the messianic rule under the Messiah, obviously. But again, he says, with an outstretched arm and my fury poured out. Okay, so he's going to pour out his fury, obviously, in the tribulation. And I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out. And so again, it's reiterated. The same thing is said twice, that I'm going to bring you out of the nations for fury. And that fury is referring to the tribulation period. Verse 35, and I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will plead my case with you face to face, just as I pleaded my case with your fathers in the wilderness in the land of Egypt. So I will plead my case with you, says the Lord God. I will make you pass under the rod. So this is another issue of judgment. And I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. The bond of the covenant is the new covenant. And I will purge the rebels from you, and those who transgress against me. So we know Zechariah 13 talks about 2/3 of Israel being purged and only 1/3 of Israel remaining. And I will bring them out of the country where they dwell, but they shall not enter the land of Israel. Talking about the non-remnant. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So as you can see with Ezekiel, I'm bringing you out of judgment to judgment. You're going to pass under the rod, and I'm going to judge you. And so this is obviously a return in unbelief. The other passages you want to note is Ezekiel 22, 17 through 22, Ezekiel 36, 22 through 24, Zephaniah 2, 1 through 2. So those are the passages that refer to Israel's regathering in unbelief before the tribulation, okay? Just incidentally, let me throw these out to you. Just you can write these down. I'll have them on the screen for you. Then these other passages refer to the regathering of Israel in belief after they've gotten saved, but they were scattered by the Antichrist. And here are the passages. Deuteronomy 30, 1 through 10, Isaiah 11 through chapter 12, verse 6, Isaiah 27, 12 through 13, Isaiah 43, 5 through 7, Jeremiah 16, 14 through 15, Jeremiah 23, 3 through 4, Jeremiah 23, 7 through 8, Jeremiah 31, 7 through 10, Ezekiel 11, 14 through 18, Amos 9, 14 through 15, Zephaniah 3, 18 through 20, Zechariah 10, 8 through 12, Matthew 24, 31, Mark 13, 27. So there's all your passages of them returning from the four corners of the world in belief. And at that time, it's not they're not only going to be regathered, humanly speaking, but also angels are sent out in Matthew 24 to gather them to help the regathering of Israel at that time. So there's your passages that you can study and understand that there are 2 worldwide regatherings of Israel. Okay, so let's get back to the issue at hand. Therefore, we shouldn't be surprised when the West, who opens its wide arms because it's so woke, to people who hate our culture, to people that hate our values, and those values being Judeo-Christian, right? And who hate Israel and are anti-Semitic, that they're going to cause problems for the West. And they are. They're causing problems for the West, and they're causing problems for Israel and Jewish people. And again, it's not that we're making this up. We already know how Jewish people feel about this. According to the Fundamental Rights Agency, the majority of Jewish respondents in 9 out of 12 countries said that the Arab-Israeli conflict affects their feelings of safety a great deal and or a fair amount. So again, with a Muslim situation that's going on in Israel with Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, whatever's happening there in Israel affects them in Western societies. And that the majority comprised over 85% of the Jewish respondents in Belgium and France, and at least 7% of them in Spain, Germany, and Denmark all said, look, that whatever happens in Israel affects us here in Europe. And look what's happening. You see the Hamas attack and Israel going to war against Hamas, and look what happens. The Jews in Western societies are attacked. This bigotry, this anti-Semitism is everywhere. And so it's true. The survey reveals how they feel. And the survey also asked Jewish respondents if they felt that they were deemed responsible for the Israeli government actions. Half of them responded in Belgium and France and Spain saying, yeah, we feel this frequently or all the time, that we're blamed for anything the Israeli government does. So I can tell you, what is that going to do? Drive them right back to their homeland. So what can we conclude? It is happening. God is bringing his people back to Israel. And he never said through the prophets what the catalyst or what the instrument would be. But since you and I live in the last days, we now understand how they get back. It's through anti-Semitism. It's unfortunate. And what you and I have to do is fight against anti-Semitism. We have to be pro-Israel. We have to do everything we can to protect our Jewish neighbors and our friends that are Jewish, and do everything we can to stand up for the nation of Israel. And so that's our job as Christian Zionists. And again, we have to oppose what's going on. We have to stand for the truth. We're the only ones that are going to do it. Most of Western society is folding to the woke mob, to Islam, to whatever. They're folding over and they're not standing against it. So we have our work cut out for us. We have to be salt and light. We have to do our job. And yes, even though I know that it's going to happen because this is what prophecy talks about. There's no stopping prophecy, right? At least I can say, and you can say, that on our watch and where God put us, that we did everything we could to stand against anti-Semitism. We did everything we could to fight for Israel, to fight for the truth, to fight against this evil that's coming our way. And that's all you want to be able to say. I can't stop the bigger issues, but I can at least say I did my part. And that's all he's asking you to do, is to do your part, to be that salt and light. And to tell your friends, to tell your neighbors, to tell your family, hey, this is what it's going down. And I got people that, God bless them, that I've talked to, and they were telling me over Thanksgiving that, they were sitting down with their family, but they have family members that are leftists or liberal or really don't understand what's going on in Israel. And they were able to educate them, during these family meals and kind of be a witness to them. Some accepted what was said, and some pitched a fit and got up and left the table and left Thanksgiving dinner. And sometimes that's what happens when you tell people the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. But that's a part of this, of being salt and light, that we correct error, that we tell the truth in love. And hey, we let the chips fall where they may. People get upset or mad, then I'm sorry, that's just too bad. But I'm going to make sure you hear the truth, right? So that's what we need to do, right? So it is a problem, obviously, but at least we can do something about it and stand for truth, okay? So with that being said, a couple announcements before we go. Make sure you're on our text alert system so we can alert you to different things that are happening in our ministry. So just follow this link and you can get set up with that. Also, make sure you download our app. Our app is extremely well done, and you get all the latest videos, and you'll be alerted. You can watch them on your phone, your tablet, your whatever, your computer. The app is fantastic, so make sure you get our app. And then continue to pray for us. I tell you this, man, taking the stand for Israel, we got a lot of pushback. We got our sign defaced twice. One of the spray paints was kind of in Arabic, so we didn't know what it said. The other one said death to Israel. And then across the way, someone wrote free Palestine. And so we've gotten phone calls from people telling us to take down our flags for Israel. And it's just nuts. But that's what happens. And when you take these stands, whatever the stand might be for truth, you get a pushback. So we need your prayers. And if you can continue to pray for us, be greatly appreciated. And lastly, if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us financially, we need all the financial help we can get. Not only to keep the online ministry going, because it's a vital part of our ministry, but to help us pay the bills. We're now paying down a debt for our building. And thank God we're in our new building, but we got to pay that down. We got to pay, now the heating and the air conditioning, the lighting and stuff like that. Now we have to have facility managers to run the place. So it brings in a whole host of things. So anyway, if you want to help us out financially, that would be fantastic. Thank you for those who have. It's meant a lot. Also, if you want to help Israel, go on our giving tab. We have a place where you can donate to Israel. It goes directly to the IDF guys that we're in concert with and in touch with, of getting them supplies. And so you can help Israel too. So anyway, with that being said, we'll depart with what Messiah told us all. When you see these things begin to happen, like the return of Israel back into the land, right? Look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you. We'll see you next time.